today's episode of PM's Red Room. The title is It Was Either Him or Me. So before we get started, I want to give a shout out. So Cheryl does her show on Mondays from 3 to 4, 107.3, and WHPHS Detroit channel 15.3 Behind the Muse. Also, Juan Gotti, God Davelli Power Hour every Thursday. So he's on tonight from 9 to 10, 88.1 WHPR. So definitely tune in. And I definitely want to give a shout out to She to Chic Boutique, Sarita Spearman. Nigel loves her outfit. Also, Q's Boutique, www.qtsboutique.com. And I have on a necklace that Corey made me, especially for the Red Room. So today, we're going to talk about domestic violence, which we do. I don't know if you guys know, but I do have a play coming in April called Why Won't They Leave? Nigel was a survivor of domestic violence. So I'm going to do an interview with Nigel in regards to her situation and how it happened. I want to start from the beginning. Nigel, you're what, 27?
26.
26?
Yeah.
Okay. 26. Beautiful young lady. She has an amazing 3-year-old daughter. Let's start with, I want to talk about, and I know you guys are going to have questions, but unfortunately, I won't be able to ask the questions during the live presentation just because, we're doing the interview. So, later on, maybe we can, follow up. So, I want to talk to you about your childhood growing up, because sometimes we feel like that we see the abuse in the home. Was it the father? Was it a grandparent? Was it an uncle? Was it an aunt? Or, women can be abusers as well. It's just not men. Right. Women can be abusive as well. Right. So I want you to just tell me a little bit about a little history about what did you see coming up, growing up, if you can remember.
Well, for the most part, I grew up in a home with just my mom. I am her only child, so there was no other siblings. It was really just me and her. There was no father in the picture, unfortunately. And it was just that was all I knew. It was just me and my mom. There was abuse going on in, her relationships that I did see. And going through I grew up, seeing that, and it made me, I felt like, it was my job to be her protector. Okay. Being her only child and not having a man in the house, or no boys, no brothers, or nothing like that. And I vowed that I would not go through that, because I seen it. I've been up close and personal in the midst of it, in the middle, trying to diffuse it, trying to come to her aid and everything like that. And I'm saying this was, from times that, I couldn't remember up until early teenage years. I witnessed her, going through these things. And it was, different relationships, not just one, and it wasn't necessarily anything in particular that she was doing. It was just, I was just noticing these guys, that she was attracting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your first relationship is down. I'm sorry, guys. Excuse me. Your first abusive relationship. When did you notice that? That it was abusive. That it wasn't regular. Tell me how that went.
So my very first experience with it, with the abuse, it wasn't physical, it was mental.
Okay.
And I didn't realize what was going on until I was like really deep off into the relationship. We had already made our commitment to one another. We had been in it well over a year. And it started off, perfectly fine. I'm like, hey, this guy's cool, laid back, and I'm like, this is good for me. And I'm like, it started off with, us spending a whole bunch of time together, and it was just like, I was fine with it. I'm like, I'm cool with it just being me and you. It don't have to be nobody else. I'm feeling you, you feeling me.
A little bit more. I want you to be slim. I want you to be in the camera.
And,
okay, there we go.
What I didn't realize was that I was being cut off from everybody.
Okay.
That was the way of the game, and I didn't realize that it was an issue until it became an issue.
Okay.
When I tried to say, hey, instead of us being together today, I'm gonna go out with my friends, or I'm gonna go with my family house, and it turns into an argument. Why you want to go with them, and what's so important over there that I can't be with you or you can't be with me, or if I'm at my family house, I'm there too long, I'm getting phone calls and I'm getting text messages, you need to hurry up, or it's these random arguments about absolutely nothing. And I'm like, okay, this ain't normal.
Controlling. So he needed to know your every move, what you were doing, and you just was not. He just felt like you were not spending enough time with him.
Yep.
Okay. Did you guys live together?
No.
Okay. All right. And so, Nigel, like, how did you get out of that? Like, how were you able to escape that relationship? What did you do?
So, that relationship went on for about 3 years. And I ended up, they always say that you leave mentally before you leave physically.
Mm-hmm.
And I just noticed myself kind of trying to plan for an exit. And I really didn't see myself getting out of it because it was so, when I did try to cut him off, he would pop up wherever I was at, you know what I'm saying, call my phone over 100 times, show up at my door, be at my window, all type of stuff. And what happened is the house that I was staying in that he used to come to, I ended up paying off my lease and ending that. And right simultaneously as I did that, I got promoted at work, so I was no longer at my regular location. I was kind of moving around. And when I moved, I was like, I won't tell him where I'm at. Mm-hmm. And when I would leave work, I took all the decals from my, my business off of my vehicle so that he wouldn't be able to recognize it. And I would take back routes home from work. I would try to stay away from, highly populated areas or places where I think it's possible I may see him or somebody he that may tell him, my whereabouts.
So you basically went into hiding.
So I went into hiding.
Okay.
To, keep him from, keep the situation, would keep away from the situation and keep it, till I felt like it had died down and it was safe.
And so you never ran back into him?
I never ran back into him until he came up to my job one day. He popped up at a location that I was working at. And he asked me why I hadn't been answering his phone calls. And I kind of brushed him off and told him, like, hey, I'll check it up with you, later. Whatever. Right now it's not a good time. And he just kind of gave me this look, like, for real? I was like, yeah, it's okay. Like, I'll call you, trying to diffuse the situation before it got started. And he left,
Peaceful.
He left peacefully. And I was like, okay. And I never ran into him, again, however, I mean, I know, but, we've never ran into each other again. Yeah, again.
Okay. So your next relationship that you went in after that is what made headlines? Eugene, right?
Yes.
And that's your kid's father.
Yes.
Right? Your daughter's father.
Yes.
You and Eugene were together for a year, right?
Yes.
1 year. And he was like, you were like, what, 23?
Yep.
He was 44.
Yep. So I met him, he was 43.
Okay, 43.
Yep.
Okay. So, and he was a bus driver, so he was definitely a public figure.
Yeah.
So, Naja, I want to go in a little deep. Tell me how that relationship started. How did you guys meet?
So like you said, Eugene was a bus driver. He drove for the Department of Transportation for Detroit. I was a service guard for the Department of Transportation. So what I did was work at, different service these different locations, some of the bus terminals, the transit center where the drivers would pass through, and passengers would board, these different routes and different things like that. And the very first encounter that I had with him, I was at the transit center, and he came into the terminal, and there was a lady there, and she was, she used to do cleaning or whatever, but we both knew her. And he wrote his number down on a piece of paper, and he gave it to her and told her to give it to me. And never said anything to me, that was just, and she gave me the number, and she pointed him out and said, this is from, the driver. They called him Short Dog.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I was like, okay, and I brushed it off, threw the number away. I really wasn't interested, in talking to anybody. I was fresh out of the toxic relationship. And I just wasn't interested in it. So I threw the number away, didn't think anything else about it. And I ended up seeing him again. I worked at one of the location where he works out of the terminal.
Okay.
Shoemaker. And he was leaving out on his bus, getting ready to proceed to his route. And he noticed me, came back, circled around, and then as he was leaving back out, he stopped again, and he was like, hey, he's like, you ain't gonna call me, took my number, whatever, you're not gonna give me a phone call. And I was like, oh yeah, I misplaced the number, and so on and so forth. And he gave it to me again. And I'm like, okay, and so I started thinking to myself, I'm like, well, maybe I should give him a phone call. He don't seem too bad, He seemed, pleasant, starting off, he had this bubbly personality about himself. So I was like, I'll give him a phone call. And my thing was, I didn't want to feel like I was, cheating myself out of, a good time or a good friend.
To start over.
Yeah, so I was just start over. So I attempted to call him, and I had the number wrong. So
First sign, huh?
First sign. And I didn't think nothing else about it. I was like, okay, well, maybe it wasn't meant. And I ended up working over there again. Saw him again. He was coming in to work. And he stopped and was like, so you just not gonna call me, huh? And I was like, well, I did. And I showed him the number that I tried to call, and he was like, that's, you got a couple digits off, and gave me the right number. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you a phone call. And I'm thinking to myself, like, man, he persistent, but I'm like, well, I'll see what he's talking about. So gave him a phone call. We had some really good phone conversations, and I had explained to him what I had just, a little bit about what I just came out of. I was like, I'm just coming out of a relationship that I didn't see myself being able to end. But I'm doing my thing now. I just started my business, and just moved, just got promoted at work. I'm feeling good.
Everything was good.
Myself. Everything was good.
Definitely.
I'm not looking for anything serious. And he said that he wasn't either, He said, I'm not looking for anything serious. I just recently, got divorced. I don't have any children, and so on and so forth. So I'm like, oh, hey, we on the same page. And before you knew it, it was a regular thing. We was hanging out, on the phone, and everything was going good.
So I have a auntie that I'm very close with, and I touched on a little bit that I experienced an abusive relationship. And one thing that she always told me is, you never tell your current relationship about what happened in the past. And I never really understood that, because she said that they can use that against you, and that happened. You know what I mean? Like, in arguments, they may throw it up, things of that nature, or whatever the case may be. So that's just a word of advice. You never tell your current relationship really what happened in your past. So, okay, so you let him know, like, basically, like, I just want to hang out. I'm not trying to be with anybody like that. And he said he was cool, but in all actuality, he was kind of easing his way in. Yeah. That happened to me as well. Go ahead.
So, like I said, everything started off good. We were hanging out. His thing was he liked to frequent the cigar bars and, everything like that. So that was different for me. I'm not a smoker or anything, but the environment was nice. And it was out of my comfort zone, but it was different. So, I said, okay, I hang out with you. So we did that. He was a gentleman, you know, starting out, pulled my chair out for me, you know, opened doors and wouldn't let me touch no door, you know, told me, hey, you know, if you meet a man and he don't do this for you, he ain't the guy for you. So, you know, I'm just like he's a good guy. And it became a regular thing. And then, you know, he started coming over to my house. And it started off, you know, with a few days and a few nights here and there, and then
he moved in.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, he would leave little articles here and there, and and I'm like, man, you know, but I didn't want to seem like I was being too hard, you know. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, he is leaving and coming back, so it ain't really like he's, you know, just being a boasty, you know. So I'm like, okay, cool. Kind of disregarded that, and he started taking over, you know. Before I knew it, we was living together. Pretty much he was there every day, leaving off and on. He started bringing more and more clothes, and asking for a key, trying to put himself on my lease and all type of stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, and making these broken promises. Well, you know, we'll split the bills and, you know, everything will be all right. And I'm just like, man, you know, but it still hadn't gotten as bad as it was going to get. So I was like, I'll let it go.
Nothing major.
Nothing major.
So, and I want to say, too, because it was the age difference. Yeah. So, you know, in the situation that I had, it was just like, okay, he really wants to spend time with me every day. You know what I mean? But actually, that's not it. He's setting up to move in. Mm-hmm. And so, at this point, he's setting up shop to move in. So now he's here. Even though in the beginning, you told him, I don't want to be in a relationship. Yeah. I just want to hang out. And he said, you know, I agree. I don't want to do that either. We cool. But the slickery part about it is that now here I am, and now I'm living with you. And then how did this happen? Mm-hmm. How did you just come and you never went home? Mm-hmm. Okay, so keep going.
So like you said, he came in and he never left. And you know, I didn't think it was, you know, anything too bad. You know, like I said, he was still coming and going. You know, I was working still, you know, he was working. So I didn't really feel like he was really overstepping, you know, any boundaries. Mm-hmm. And then I started noticing, you know, some drinking patterns that he had. And, you know, how his behavior would change, you know, when he, you know, would get intoxicated. And it was just like, you know, maybe I need to scale back a bit.
Okay.
And there ended up being an incident where he came up to my job, and he started off calling me. I was at work one night, and this was his first out of hand, you know, experience. And he called my phone. I picked up. You know, he like, hey, what you doing? You know, I'm just leaving from downtown, the cigar bar, and I could tell that he was intoxicated. Mm-hmm. And he kept saying, you know, I'm gonna come up there to see you. I'm on my way right now. And I'm like, you can't come up here. You know, I'm like, I'm just go ahead and go home. I'm at work. Like, you don't need to be up here. I can tell you've been drinking. Mm-hmm. You know, go ahead about your business. So he kept insisting that he was going to come up there regardless of what I was saying. Mm-hmm. And I could sense an argument coming on. So I ended the phone call.
Okay.
So I ended up, you know, when I hung up the phone, he started blowing me up. Calling me.
Sorry, y'all. Oh yeah.
He started blowing me up, calling my phone back to back, texting me, and he eventually popped up. Okay. So I'm like, okay, you know, here we go. So he came around to
I want you to be seen.
Okay. He came around to the station that I was working at, and he started knocking on the door for me to let him in. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you know, I'm telling him to go away. I'm like, you can't be up here. You know, I'll talk to you in a minute. And he banging on the door. Okay. Now he aggressive. Mm-hmm. Now he calling me out my name. He open the door and this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't let him in. And he got so angry. He punched the glass of the window, mm-hmm. the door, and shattered it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is not going well. Like, this is really finna get ugly. And he ended up walking away and going to get in his car. And of course, I was all type of names, everything in the book. So I ended up calling my supervisor, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, because everybody around the job knew who he was. He had been there for a little minute." So I said, can you escort him off the property? I'm like, he's up here. He's intoxicated. I've asked him to leave several times. He won't go. And so he like, all right. He like, I'll be out there in a minute. So he came outside, saw him out there. So he went out there to talk to him. He like, what's going on, man? He like, I came up here to see her. She not answering, opening the door for me. And I think there's a guy in there with her.
Was he drinking?
He was drinking. He was intoxicated.
Okay.
So my supervisor came around to the door. I let him in. He like, what happened to the glass? I'm like, he shattered it. And I'm like, because I wouldn't let him in. So he like, what is he talking about? He's saying some guys in here, with you and this. I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about. I'm like, he's intoxicated. I told him he couldn't be up here. I wasn't letting him in, and this is the result. And he was like, I'm looking around, check and see what he's talking about, see if anybody's in here. Checked around, went out there, told him he had to go. So he's out there intoxicated. He like, I don't have to go nowhere. I leave, but I ain't got to go nowhere. This, that, and other. So he ended up leaving eventually. My supervisor made me write a report. He also wrote a report, and that was that. And I ended up, I'm like, I'm not doing this with him. I'm like, this is too much. Like, I don't like, I can't deal with stuff like this. And, so we stopped talking for a little minute.
Okay. How long? Months, weeks?
Probably, I want to say probably a couple weeks to probably like a month.
So how did he get back in, Nigel?
I ended up finding out I was pregnant.
Okay.
Found out I was pregnant with my daughter. Mm-hmm. And I thought the right thing to do was to at least tell him that I was pregnant, and for us to make the decision together if we weren't gonna keep the child.
Okay.
And that's where I was with it. I was like, listen, hey, I'm pregnant. I'm like, but this is not an ideal situation for us, especially not to be bringing a child in. I'm like, we're not getting along. We're not together. I definitely don't want to bring a child into the world with someone I'm not even with. Like, this is not right,
Right.
And that's when it started going left.
So, I want to say this because sometimes, and just women and men in general, you can tell someone, I'm not with you, I don't want to be with you. But if you're doing everything in a relationship, like y'all spending time, he over to your house, in his mind, like you guys are together. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? Like, you guys are still being intimate, things of that nature. So you saying we're not, but in his mind, he's like, whatever, I'm here. That's even just like when you break up with someone. But you guys are still dealing. Mm-hmm. In their mind, you are still together. Yeah. So I want to touch, and I want to get into the very first time he put his hands on you. Describe that to me.
So the very first time, it started off with moments where he would grab me up, Okay. If I was, in his words, talking back.
Okay.
And he had this thing about being in control and no back talking and you listening to me, and what I say goes, and I'm like, listen, you in my house, you know what I'm saying? I pay the bills here. I'm grown. You ain't finna just talk to me any kind of way. You know what I'm saying? So I would, say what I had to say.
Definitely.
Well, he didn't like that, and we got into an altercation where I was talking back, to him, and he grabbed me by my arm, snatched me up. He like, when I'm talking, you don't talk. And I'm like, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, okay, this And I'm like, this has got out of hand, you know what I'm saying? So of course I'm like, you don't need to put your hands on me, whatever. If I'm not putting my hands on you, like we don't need to. And it, of course, the normal, I apologize, it won't happen again, and
sorry. I don't need another sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wasn't myself. And of course it happened again. It got worse. And it went from just snatching me up, grabbing my arm, to throwing things at me, and to flat out blows. Like I'm getting slapped or I'm getting punched. And it progressively just got worse and worse.
So when this was going on, you stayed away from people.
Yep.
Because I mean, you're beautiful, you're light skinned, so I'm quite sure if he was punching you and then you had marks, you had bruises.
Yeah.
Did you ever make police reports on him?
I did.
You did. Okay.
I did.
And you guys were staying in Harper Woods, is that correct?
Yes.
So I know that we spoke, and I know that you told me about a time where you were 9 months pregnant and he beat you.
Yep.
Can we talk about that?
So I was 9 months pregnant with my daughter, and I can't remember exactly what the altercation was about, but it started in the bedroom, and we were arguing, and I said, you know what? I said, I ain't got time for this. I'm gonna go sleep on the couch.
Right.
And I grabbed all my things, grabbed my charger, all the little stuff I wanted to take out there with me, my pillow and everything, and I went to the couch and went and laid down, and had all my things laid out on the armrest just above my head. And he storms out there, snatched everything off the couch, and threw it on the floor. So I jumped up. I'm like, don't touch my stuff, leave me alone. Just going on back in the room. I'm like, you tripping? I'm good. Just leave me alone. And it went from that to full-fledged fight. Now it's a brawl in there. I'm getting thrown around, tossed. I had my baby shower just the following month. So I still had all type of stuff, all type of gifts in the front room. And we tussling over the phone. I'm trying to call the police to get him out. I'm getting thrown all over the gifts and all type of stuff. And we ended up making it to the bedroom. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, I'm on the phone with the dispatcher, and he's trying to get me to not call, not talk to them, not tell them what's going on. So he's trying to get the phone from me and hang it up. I'm trying to keep the phone, and get him out of my house. And we got to the room. He knocked me on the floor. Flat out knocked me on the floor. And he's on top of me. He's choking me. He has his knee in my stomach. And at this point, the fight had been going on for so long. I'm exhausted. I feel my body like just going limp.
Right.
I'm exhausted. I don't have no more fight in me. I'm winded. I can't breathe. My chest is hurting. I'm thinking this is it. I'm like, he gonna kill me.
Right.
And I'm just like, I can't do it. I'm really like, I feel myself like letting go.
Giving up.
I'm like, I don't have no more fighting. Like, I'm tired, And but I'm praying at the same time that at least my daughter make it. And I remember telling him through breaths, like, I can't breathe. I'm like, I can't breathe. Like, you gotta stop. Like, I get it now. And he like, that's the point. And I feel myself going in and out of consciousness. And the police ended up coming. I want to say one of the neighbors called the police. Mm-hmm. And because one of the neighbors was trying to get into the unit. She said she heard the screams and everything like that and knew what was going on, but she couldn't get through the door. So I ended up crawling to the front room, letting the police in, and they came in, and I made it to the couch, and they're like, trying to figure out what happened. I got a busted lip. I can't breathe. They give me water. They're like, you need us to call EMS. Is everything all right? Like, what's going on? What happened? So I'm explaining to them what happened. And I remember one of the officers, you know, being like, telling the other guy, like, you know, well, he has scratches on him, you know, and basically trying to make it out to be that I was
you were the aggressor. Yeah, definitely.
And the officer that I was talking to, because they ended up separating us. They left him in the unit, took me in the hallway. Mm-hmm. And I'm out there, I'm panting, you know, trying to catch my breath. I'm drinking water, trying to, you know, get it together. And the officer almost lost it. He's like, what do you mean? Like, she's 9 months pregnant. What do you mean he has scratches on him? Of course, you know.
Right.
She's trying to protect herself. And they asked me, you know, what did I want them to do with him? And I'm like, I just want him out my house, you know, get my keys from him. I just want him away from me. They're like, do you need us to call EMS, you know, to come and get you, or are you okay? I'm like, I'm going to drive myself to the ER. Just please get him away from me. Leave me alone, and I'll take care of it from here.